Okay. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Uncaged. We're here in the green room at the studio. Listen, I know it's not much, but you gotta do what you gotta do. So, before we go into it, today we're talking real estate. I know last week we got to clarify all of the terms, kind of about business, things that you guys might not know. And that's kind of the whole goal of this course, is to expose you to things that through the last 5.5 years, I've had the privilege of being in entrepreneurship, even longer than that if you go back to my college and high school days. But that we teach you stuff that you only get from being in the arena. No shade to academic professors. They all mean well. They all do a lot of great research. But at the end of the day, we all know in everything in life, if that's, if that's dating, if that's business, if that's everything in between, you learn by doing. And that is why we brought this course to you guys. We've talked about that. So you get to see a little behind the scenes. You got a little TV, a microwave. Look, you got to make do. It can't be perfect off the rip. That's one of the lessons we'll talk about this semester, is this perfectionism, this analysis paralysis that our generation, that younger people have in business, is really deadly. It prevents a lot of great ideas from getting started. I read something the other day where it said that there's so many great ideas that are in the graveyard because people had analysis paralysis getting started. So we are the antithesis of that. We want to make sure that you ship your product as early as possible. You ship that new business as early as possible. That you're not scared to wade into the treachery of entrepreneurship, to the beauty of entrepreneurship. That's why we created what we're going to do. As always, show overview today. If you go to page 7 in your spirals, in your Business Uncaged spirals, we're talking about real estate, residential, duplex, smaller, cash flow acquisitions. I just went to the bank, picked up our check. We're going to use this as our down payment on a rent house down the road, 384 West Van Alstyne Parkway, a great rent home, one that I can use for depreciation. We're going to walk through how you depreciate a income, no matter what you're doing. If you're an accountant, if you are an entrepreneur, if you have a corporate job and your spouse can be designated as a real estate professional with the IRS, we're going to talk through all of that. And we're going to talk through really simple things. When people say, I can't afford that house, I don't know. We're going to walk through the math. Can you? We're going to look at money down. We're going to look at percentages down. We're going to look at different home loans. If some of you are going to be coaches or educators or anything in between, there are certain loan programs out there. We can look at certain areas. If you're in East Texas and West Texas, there's different United States agriculture programs. There's Section 8. There's local bank loans. And we're going to talk about what a secured asset means versus an unsecured asset. I had a bad experience last year. We'll talk about with an unsecured asset. And so we'll be able to look through what the difference is and why real estate is a safe play for the most part. Because the asset, what the bank is giving you money for, is actually a real thing that can be resold by that bank in the event you can't make your payments. It's a secured, secured asset. We'll talk about that. I'm going to throw on my mic. We're going to go to the studio. As always, we've got a little lecture at the beginning. We'll talk through some common misconceptions, some very basic real estate language and jargon that you can know. So as you start talking to people where you're from, as you talk to friends, as you watch TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, you're able to comprehend what this mythical land of real estate is. Take a look at this ad. As always, we are very thankful to our ad partners. But if you need a college checking account, if you decide you want to open a real estate account, if you want anything related to financials, you got to check out First United Bank. Truly, a young person's bank, a entrepreneur's bank. I know the family well. The Massey family is dead set on creating the best banking experience in Texas for young Texans that are business hungry and that are trying to grow a family and are trying to grow a business. So First United Bank, we're grateful for their sponsorship. We'll see you guys in just a second. Okay, well, hopefully our little green room introduction got you warmed up for what we're talking about today. Real estate. Real estate has blessed many people in my life tremendously. I actually grew up in a family business that was construction and real estate in North Texas. So I've been around real estate. I've poured a lot of concrete pads. I've done a lot of summer jobs developing real estate. I would help my parents lease real estate. And then I actually own some of my own. Now, the studio we're in here, I'll give you guys a tour another time because this goes back to that analysis paralysis. I promise you, what you see right now is not what you're seeing behind the camera. It's kind of funny what you can do with some good lighting and a good production team. But this house we actually acquired last year. It was a great deal for sale by owner, put some money down, got good financing. And, we use the revenue we make from Business Uncaged to pay down our real estate debt and gain equity in this. So real estate, you guys have heard about this. If your parents are telling you you need to buy real estate, you need to have home equity, you need to stop renting, you need to actually, get some equity in your home, or you need to buy a rental property. If many of you are, the school of Grant Cardone or all these YouTube people, real estate is preached tremendously on socials. It has been for the last decade or so. Now, a lot of these people are trying to raise money from you. They're trying to get you to invest in their funds. They want to sell you a course and the whole 9 yards. We're young people. We know how these internet marketers work. But by and large, their message is kind of true. Real estate is one of the oldest assets in the country. It goes back to common law in Britain. What makes America so special, and a lot of people don't know this, is that in America, it's one of the very few countries in the world where you actually can own a sliver of the ground, of the dirt, where your blood is in the soil. That's a legal concept. Having gone to law school, it was really interesting to study in property law, to study how in America you can own the dirt of the country. You look at countries like Singapore and even some of the way the laws are in Europe, you kind of lease real estate from the government. You never really own it. And the select few that do have the privilege of owning it, that's where these kings and queens and monarchs and everything come from, because they always have capture of the land, of the resources. That's what makes America so special from a real estate and a property law point of view. Real estate was first able to be loaned in the 1700s with land speculators coming over from Europe. Banks would lend against that land. They would file documents in the county courthouses called liens. That's in your definitions for today. They would file liens where they said, if you don't make these payments, we get the land back. So if you look at the other definition below it on Business Uncaged terms to know today, you look at secured asset. Now, we just talked about that in the green room before we went live. But a secured asset is where a bank, an investment fund, a private individual gives you money because there is something of inherent value on the back end of that. There's land, there's oil, there's metals, there's a watch, there's a car. There's an actual asset that can be transacted in the event you, as the borrower, do not make your payments to the lender, a bank, an individual, an investment fund, whoever that may be. Now, secured asset lending, what they're trying to protect here is the difference in fluctuation on prices. We'll look at this on the whiteboard in a second before we get into the second half of class. But if the market is hot in one town right now, let's say that a house is worth $500,000. The bank's sole goal is to say, okay, even in a down market, what can I sell that house for? Now, let's say it's a hot market right now. In a down market, when the market's not hot,
Say the bank can sell that house for 420,000. What the bank is looking for on that down payment is they're looking for the difference between what you have to buy that at and what they know that inherent asset value is forever, no matter which day. If you call in 10 years, you call next year, you call today, you call in 5 seconds, they know the amount of money they can extract out of that asset to get their money back if the loan goes bad. That's what a bank's trying to do. Now, sometimes if you look at the word appraisal in your Business Uncaged definition, appraisals are a set property value that an independent party, a county, they attach a number and they say that's what it's worth. So if you look at the appraisal, banks are often going to even lower your down payment because the appraisal came back so high and they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. In the case that John, or in the case that Sarah defaults on that bank payment, we know we can get that much money for this. So we don't even need them to put that much down. And sometimes that happens. That's happened several times with me and getting good real estate deals where you don't have to put tons of money down. So as we walk through the life cycle of real estate, the first thing that matters is the property appraisal. That's going to determine how much the bank needs you to put down. If that's 0%, 5%, 15%, 20%, it's rarely above 20% because you rarely have market fluctuations that take real estate, sub the current value, sub 20% of that value. So in that 500,000 example, it's rare a bank would ever make you put more than, $100,000 down because it's probably not, maybe very, very, very rarely, but it's probably not going to dip below that $400,000 price point. So the nice thing is you can use leverage. Look at your Business Uncaged definitions. You guys have taken finance classes and accounting classes. Leverage is when you use someone else's money that you don't currently have to go acquire an asset, to go acquire a business ahead of schedule. For you to save up the money to buy that rent house, it would take you X amount of years as you save up that, hard-earned money from being an accountant, from being a nurse, from being a teacher. But leverage is when you get to go out, get money from someone else to acquire something right now that you wouldn't be able to unless you saved for years. So with banking and real estate, you're going out to get leverage on that asset to purchase that asset that you couldn't afford right now unless you got leverage from someone else. That's essentially how it works. Now, what's important about real estate, and this is a point I'm very passionate about, and I hope you guys comprehend this when I say this, is with business, people treat real estate and business, think of a donut shop. People treat those as two separate things. It's like real estate and running a business are not the same thing. Whoa, whoa, whoa. They are. This is what I've realized. When you look at getting a renter, those contracts are often a year, 2 years, 3 years. A lot of you in apartment complexes and your universities, your law schools, wherever you're at watching Business Uncaged, you have a contract for where you're living, for renting. And those contracts are long-term customers, essentially. If we have a donut shop and John walks in and gets a chocolate donut, that is one sale. Yeah, it's an easier sale, but if you look at real estate, that's still a customer. You're still selling that person on a contract. Now, it's a lot harder to sell because it's more money every month for a longer period of time. So the risk is higher on the customer as opposed to John walking in with a donut and paying $1.27. There's not a lot of risk on John. If he doesn't like the donut, he throws it away. It's $1.27, whatever. Now, if Sarah signs a real estate contract for 2 years and say the rent's $1,000 a month, she's now on the hook for $24,000 in some way, shape, or form. She knows she is committing to that $1,000 a month for a long-term time. That's why it's harder. There's more effort that goes into getting a renter. But if you think about it, that's the equivalent of selling John 1,000 donuts per month. That's $1,000 in revenue no matter which way you look at it. Now, as we get later in the course and we start introducing more difficult concepts, we're going to talk about a cap rate. A cap rate is essentially the multiple you can sell your real estate for based on the cash flow of that property. Same thing in businesses. If you start making $1 million a year with a plumbing business, there's going to be a number attached to that someone's going to price that business at. We'll talk about all that later, but I want you to have a high-level overview. Real estate is one of the most truest form of wealth you can possibly get. Real estate has made a lot of people wealthy across America, even without the intent of becoming wealthy. It's not like these people are AI founders or Facebook founders or anything in between. They simply follow a financial schedule. Hey, pay this much per month. I have a renter paying me money. I'm going to send that to the bank. Over time, my equity grows. Now, equity is the amount of ownership you have in that asset. So as you pay into the bank's loan and say, hey, I'm paying you back, principal and interest, look at your definitions on your business uncaged spiral. Principal is the amount of money you took out from the bank to buy the asset. Interest is they're saying, hey, this isn't for free. Like, it ain't a free ride over here. So the interest is the percentage, and you guys have done interest on concert tickets. We're a young generation. We've done stupid things. You've done interest on cars if you've bought in a car. Interest is a price you pay for using that leverage we talked about. So they're going to throw an interest rate on there. You're going to have interest payments every month, a principal payment every month to pay back that total amount. And that is your debt payment. That is how this whole game works. So as you pay the bank that principal, that interest, that principal wipes away from the amount you owe the bank. And that difference, that's your equity. When you hear these real estate course sellers, you hear your parents telling you, you need equity in a home. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about the amount that you are scaling back from the bank as you pay off that debt. That's your equity. Now, the beautiful part about real estate too is that as the appreciation, if you look at your definitions, appreciation, we'll talk a lot about this later, but the appreciation is the amount the property goes up. So theoretically, your equity can increase faster then the debt is paid off. Your equity is always going to be that difference in how much you owe the bank as you, gain ground, gain ground, gain ground, and as you climb that mountain of paying them back. But more than anything, if the property appreciates and goes up in value, you're going to gain that upside because there's a certain amount you owe the bank. They don't get any more than that. So once the property appreciates north of that amount you owe the bank, that's where real high-end equity, high churning, high growing equity comes in. And that's a lot of times when people will list these rent houses to sell them on the market to capture that equity. And that's where they get cash back out. So as we transition our scene here to the whiteboard and go through the Business Uncaged lesson of the day, light up the chat. Let me know any questions you have. And as always, we'll have those chat questions answered before we go purchase this rent house live on Business Uncaged. See you guys in 1 second. Okay, here we go. And we're back with the whiteboard. You know, I love the whiteboards. We've talked about this. Okay, we're in real estate. Okay, we're back. As you guys know, I love my ad sponsors. They're the blessing of how we get to do what we do. So let's move this back a tiny bit so we get a little better camera angle. All right. So Champions Real Estate School is an amazing real estate school where you guys can get your real estate agent license and eventually your brokerage license. So I highly recommend Champions Real Estate School. If you use the code Business Uncaged, you get 20% off of any real estate agency course you take. We're grateful to them and we're grateful for their championship, no pun intended, of the real estate industry in Texas. Today, you know, I love the tip of the day. We've got a biblical parable from Luke. Now, this is something one of my friends always brings this up. He talks about not taking the seat at the table whenever you're not the host. And if you look at Luke 14, 7 through 11, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And if you look at that parable and what it means if you're at a business dinner and you get invited by some successful men in your area, you don't order the most expensive thing on the menu. You don't sit at the nicest spot on the table, the head of the table. If they maybe invite you on a road trip to a real estate conference in Dallas, you don't take the front seat when there's 4 seasoned gentlemen or women going on this real estate road trip. You take the back seat, humble yourself, and then maybe you'll be exalted. But if you exalt yourself at the beginning, rarely does it work out. And oftentimes you're humbled. And we're thankful to the gospel for providing us that lesson for this tip of the day. Real estate 101, as we talked about, rent is essentially high ticket sales. Like we talked about, to sell John 1,000 donuts, that's the equivalent of Sarah renting your rent house for $1,000 a month. That's the same amount of revenue. Oftentimes, though, people treat real estate and business so differently, but they're the same thing. A dollar is a dollar, revenue is revenue. So you have to work harder to get that contract. You have to work harder to get Sarah to agree to the $1,000 a month because it's more money. Of course, it's harder. But it's harder because it's more revenue and it's the same amount of intensity from an economic efficiency point of view that it would be to sell John on 1,000 donuts. Number 2, do not forget, renters are your customers. That is such a misunderstated point in the real estate industry. Oh, well, my tenant. No. They are your customers. Do not forget that. As you guys go acquire real estate in Texas, as you go build duplexes, as you go buy rent houses, as you own commercial buildings and multifamily buildings, they are not your tenants. They're your customers. The customer is king. We'll talk more about that in our sales stream in a few weeks, but your customer is your king and your renter is your customer. Number 3, your cap rate is the same thing as an exit multiple. And both of these will come back up in our later lessons. But your cap rate is your exit multiple. The percentage you're getting on that real estate, on the percentage that you're valuing that rent cash flow at, is going to be the same thing that you value your profit of a service-based business at. You got to remember that. And then in real estate, we have our monthly line items, and we're going to walk through these in a second on a financial model. We've got property taxes. Now, that's going to be a yearly bill that's split by 12. That's how you're going to show how much it costs per month. You're going to have insurance. Once again, that's often a yearly bill. We're going to split that by 12. That's the cost per month. We've got maintenance. That's going to be a monthly fee. Lawn mowing, if any appliances go wrong. If squirrels are running through the roof, I've got stories on that. We've had to trap many squirrels in a building that we own, and it gets really funny. And P&I at the bank, we talked about that, your principal and your interest. That's going to be a monthly expense if you choose to take, what's the word? Starts with an L, leverage. If you choose to take leverage, you're going to have a principal and interest, one payment to the bank. Number 5, you're going to have leasing costs. Are you subscribing to Zillow? Are you running social media ads? Are you paying local influencers to post ads to lease your space? All of that is going to be cost in real estate. We're going to look at a financial model in a second for 384 West Van Alstyne Parkway. That is what we're going to be acquiring today. I'm excited. I've been looking at this asset for a while and ultimately wanted to save it for you guys to be able to see how you acquire real estate. How you acquire real estate on the real streets of America. So we switch up these camera angles here. Now the fun part of the day. 384 West Van Alstyne Parkway. This is an amazing asset right on the main road in Van Alstyne, Texas, a town that I own numerous properties in, the town that I grew up in and went to high school in. Probably shouldn't bring my name up because I probably have embarrassing stories. So if you ever hear, don't ask about me. 384 West Van Alstyne Parkway, an amazing 2-bed, 1-bath rent house. The property is going to appreciate. This town is one of the hottest towns in the nation. The property is going to appreciate. We're going to talk more about appreciation at a later date, but we're going to be able to get equity out early from this property likely because of the depreciation, but also with the amount we're paying the bank every month with principal and interest. The house is listed for $205,000. Now, if you have bought a house, if your parents have bought a house, you know that oftentimes what the list price is not what it's eventually bought for. So today, we are going to call the real estate agent, and I have to put some production into this show. So they know I'm going to call, but we're going to show you how it goes. They have actually already accepted the $195,000 offer. We're going to call them so you guys could see how it goes. So it is slightly staged, but we're going to call him, and we're going to offer the amount so you can see, what his justification is with that. And then we're going to talk to the banker. I already know the amount that I'm having to put down in full transparency, but we're going to talk to the banker on set, and he's going to tell us how much we put down because of what the property appraised at. He's going to show us the appraisal report, and then we're going to put an amount down between $5,000 and $20,000 down. That is what the check is right here once he tells us how much we have to put down. Then we're going to talk about homesteading versus renting. You can homestead a personal residence. You cannot homestead a rental residence. Those are going to be different bank terms as well. We'll talk to Ryan Hayes, the banker at Texas Bank, about that in the process. We'll look at how this property is going to appreciate. We'll look at our monthly P&L over here. Remember, we have property tax, insurance, maintenance, P&I at the bank, leasing cost. We're going to run through that financial model. And then we have, is it leasable? Who's our target market for this? It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. Think through that a little bit. Put in the chat who you think's a prime candidate. We're going to call those people. We're going to ask them what they think about it. And then, is there any depreciation? We're going to look at this in a later episode on how I can use my personal income and use the depreciation off of this rent house to where I pay less in taxes. Because that, at the end of the day, is kind of the goal, is to keep more money in your pocket. Any questions here, throw them in the chat. We're going to head over to the other set that we have at 384 West Van Alstyne Parkway, and we'll see you guys in a second. Okay, and we're back. We're at 384 West Van Alstyne Parkway. We're about to be joined by Ryan Hayes. He is the president here at Texas Bank in Van Alstyne, Texas. Ryan's going to tell us what this property appreciated for, and then Ryan's going to tell us how much we're going to have to put down to acquire this property. Now, Jeff Scher, local guy, is the real estate agent. We're going to call Jeff here in a second, live on camera, and Jeff's going to tell us the offer he took, full transparency, it's $195,000. That's the offer Jeff took. And Jeff's going to walk us through why he took that in comparison to market rates, why his client felt like that was a good rate. And then we're going to walk through how much this check of my actual money. I'd like you guys to know that no one in academia has ever done that. I'm not in academia. We're in capitalism. We just like to show what we do every day on Business Uncaged. Apologies, it's windy out here. But we've got this check. We're going to write it for the down payment. And then we're going to walk through all of our different monthly costs live on camera. Ryan Hayes is pulling up right now. And then we'll talk through 384 West Van Alstyne Parkway and how we can make money on this. We're going to put our cold hard cash down. And then throughout the semester, we'll have segments where I'm attempting to lease it. You'll hear those phone calls, and then we'll eventually get it leased. We'll get this to be a nice cash flowing asset, an asset that appreciates. And then you guys will be able to go rinse and repeat the exact same strategy in towns across Texas. We'd like to thank all of our sponsors. Ryan Hayes will be here just a second. Take your break, light up the chat with comments. But as always, Business Uncaged, we're here to help you make more money and maybe find a faith along the way. We'll see you guys on Thursday, right back here for Cattle 101. Keep looking at those spirals. Watch the course links we send. Have a great weekend, and may you have a blessed Easter. We'll see you next week.